So I'm Luc Palerme, Research Director at Analysis Mason. We are a global technology, media, and telecoms consulting firm, helping clients shape, make, and act on the decisions that steer progress and global communications. As you may know, Analysis Mason acquired NSR a couple of years ago, so we bring together the space expertise of the NSR team with the telco expertise of Analysis Mason. So we are at the forefront of research and insights. Our clients rely on our research and insights for strategic planning, investment, and marketing and benchmarking. We cover all aspects of strategy development and review. We play leading role in helping to formulate and examine the policy and regulations related to TMT. We provide robust commercial and technical due diligence support, and we help structure and operate major IT, digital, and business transformation programs. So Analysis Mason is convinced that the satellite telecoms integration trend is going to provide very good opportunities for the satellite industry. In fact, we forecast that by 2033, revenues will climb to 165 billion, propelled by applications like direct-to-device, connected vehicles, IoT, and broadband. We think that the impact is going to be very wide, helping traditional satellite operators compete in the world of mega constellations and taking advantage of the progress in 3GPP, the innovations in 3GPP in terms of scale, lower cost, and access to new technologies like AI. We have a great set of panelists today to discuss all these topics and additional topics. Let me welcome Dr. Amina Oubendir to the panel, Jean-Philippe, Glenn Katz, and Nicola Cromer. Please, a round of applause for the panelists. And I would like to start the conversation from the market perspective. I think that the satellite industry is many times too focused on the technology and forgets a bit about the market side of things. So let's start by asking the satellite operators, which are the ones that are more in contact with the end users, on which are the drivers for this satellite telco integration. Where do you see the growth coming in this trend? Glenn, do you want to start?
Sure, thank you. So the way we see the market is the way I think most of us in this room probably have seen the market for the last 50 years, which is less on the consumer side and more on enterprise, aviation, maritime, and government. Now, what we're doing at Telesat is we're introducing a low Earth orbit satellite network, and that unlocks a gigantic market. I think you mentioned 165 billion. Some of the research we've done bottoms up in terms of how many mobile backhaul sites are out there, 5 million as an example, and what's the growth rate of that, and moving from 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G. So when you talk about the market, we see it as around $600 or so billion in the mid-2030s. More than half of that is consumer, which is the focus of some of our other friends in the industry. But I think we're focused totally on that enterprise, maritime, aviation, and government. And then I think there's some applications maybe that I can speak about that are relevant to that, which is certainly mobile backhaul, the extension of mobile backhaul. And from a Telesat perspective, as opposed to, let's say, direct-to-device, what we're really building is a layer 2 carrier Ethernet network over satellite. So think of all the applications that we see for the market for our particular business as just an extension of a carrier's network. So all of the carrier applications are the applications that we're going after. So I think I'll just leave it there for now. We have a lot of other folks who might want to say something.
Thank you. So Jean-Philippe, anything to add there? I think Glenn highlighted some of the applications that will see a lot of benefit, but they seem to be very, let's say, traditional to the satellite industry. Do you see anything new coming?
I think the way we see the market is the integration of the telco market, and we'll talk about standardization and softwareization, but really look at the telco market on how non-terrestrial network can blend into terrestrial network. And that's really, that has been our focus for the past 10 years, being very active in supporting 3GPP release 17, release 19 now. And this is where the market is going to evolve a great deal. The minute you consider that there is seamless transition between terrestrial and non-terrestrial, the number of applications that can be targeted is huge. We talk about backhaul, and backhaul is one of the key markets we sell. The minute you also evolve through mobility, imagine a car, and that's one of the main applications that we have been discussing with SoftBank. Imagine a car moving from an area which is covered with tower and 5G coverage, and then evolving into a market where there is no coverage. And if the transition between one terrestrial network and a non-terrestrial network is seamless, and you have a large market that you can target. That's really the new type of application that we are targeting on top of the standard market that we are already serving, cell backhaul, enterprise in particular.
Excellent. So, Amina, how does this space infrastructure needs to evolve to serve all these new applications? How does this integration actually happen?
If these are new applications or the same applications but calling for different requirements, then the system has to change, definitely. So we build the system taking into account the requirements from the application level. And to reuse the examples that my colleagues used, and coming from Airbus, the aviation business, everything aero connectivity, you can imagine the seamless mobility that is required there. Until now, it's more the satellite connectivity, but we are also working on air-to-ground connectivity when the aircraft is over urban areas. The automotive industry, and we know that there are regulations, at least in Europe, that call for the embedded SIM cards in the cars. The remote oil and gas, agriculture applications that would call also for this global connectivity. The direct-to-device, and I think it was mentioned, the direct-to-device use cases and how we can reuse the broadband devices that we have from the GPP of the mobile industry in general. Everything defense also is calling, and mission critical is calling for a seamless mobility and lower cost of devices when it comes to troops and first responders moving and using any available network to communicate or to achieve their mission. So all these will call for the integration that Jean-Philippe has mentioned, and in 3GPP, for example, it started more with the IoT focus, but on the ground. So regenerative payloads, GEO satellites with coverage for IoT devices, 3GPP or non-3GPP with interworking functions. Moving to release 18 was still GEO, transparent payload, and more NR NTN, so new radio 5G, that's more broadband applications. We hit release 19 and we're advancing this quite nicely with regenerative payloads, but LEO satellites. That's where the LEO comes into the integration between terrestrial and non-terrestrial in release 19. And both IoT and broadband are being covered. As we move with the community into release 20, we're just reinforcing this mobility and putting stronger requirements in terms of we call it service continuity. It's not just mobility and being covered wherever we are, but also not having to search for the solution, being transparent to the user without changing the device. And that will take, of course, some time because the devices today in the SATCOM field are way different from the mobile devices. The cost is also different, but that's where standardization is needed to lower the cost and making sure this mobility, we achieve it from both coverages.
Right. So yeah, it's right that a lot of focus should be on the device and the ground segment. So Nicola, how is the ground segment? How does the ground segment need to evolve in this satellite telco integration transition?
Yeah, the ground segment has to evolve quite a bit. We see a lot of requirements, for example, from bandwidth efficiencies, keeping costs down, being able to meet what we talked about here, the software-defined satellites, that dynamicity with multi-orbits and regenerative payloads, having all that orchestration from the ground up. So the software-defined space needs to meet the software-defined ground and vice versa. Having that orchestration is really important, but also being able to then adhere to the standards. So that's not just the 5G NTN standards that we need to build around our solutions around, but we also have to think from a ground segment perspective of other standards, such as the Diffie standard. There are requirements within the waveform consortium that we build our ground systems around, and taking all of that into consideration is important. Now, also from going to market and keeping the costs down, when you look at the the cloud deployment opportunities that there are, you want to be able to now deploy your ground segment in other ways than just on purpose-built hardware. So these cloud deployment scenarios are also important. And then there's, on the modem side, the requirements that are with all the applications that were just mentioned, where we need to have a versatile modem portfolio that can go after and can adhere to all these different requirements from a market perspective. But also there, you want to have that flexibility to put the ground segment systems on these commercial off-the-shelf solutions and closer to the edge in order to then really be able to tailor to your different market requirements. So there's quite a variety of different requirements that we see.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's good that you mentioned standards, 5G, because we are going to discuss a bit more about this later on. But now I want to ask the satellite operators on how this satellite telco integration, how this adoption of 5G are going to help you compete with Starlink, which at the end of the day is one of the key questions on the industry these days.
Okay, so I'll give it a shot. Starlink is a closed system. At the end of the day, what Starlink provides is a great service, and I think what Starlink has done is accelerating a trend that was there. We started discussing about standardization in 2015. And remember us being part of discussion with all of the equipment manufacturers, and everybody thought we were nuts. The only way you can scale is if you have standard and if you use the same way of thinking that the bigger guys are doing. And that's where following the trend of the telco is really key. What Starlink has done is just everybody is waking up something that we all knew was coming. If you want to scale, you need to use a standard. The beauty of what we are doing and the beauty of what's going on in the market today is everybody is there. If you look at the testing that was done with Airbus, testing was done with Qualcomm, Ericsson. You have now big players that are not satellite players that can help us scale. And you can do that if you standardize. And if you standardize, you lower the cost of the equipment. You are able to have the right chipsets that will help you really scale at a much faster pace. So I'm really encouraged with what's going on right now. It's not about LEO, GEO, MEO. It's about integration of all of the technology on satellite with the integration of the technology on the ground. That's where the 5G standardization, but I think everybody gets excited with the 5G standardization right now. I think you need to go one step further. There are some stuff in the release 19. If you get access to even more bandwidth, and if you standardize and you have the right chipset that can go use KU, then the scale is even much greater than what we are thinking about today.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah. So Glenn, do you agree with this? Do you see any risk in this transition to 5G standard networks for you?
Yes, I might take a little bit of a contrarian view, if you would, if I may. It's fun. We're all here. We want to have some fun. First of all, Starlink's a great system. It's an amazing system if anybody's used it. But like I had said before, it's all about the market. It's all about where the money is. We're all in this to make money somehow. So where are those markets? We have yet to see, for satellite operators, the direct-to-device market. 5G is a great technology. Release 19 is good. We've tested it ourselves on our test LEO. But we don't see the market yet from the satellite operator's perspective. We can't close the business case on how much it's going to cost to put those specific type of technologies on our satellite. In the future, will it happen? Maybe, and we'll keep an eye on it. So standardization, though, as you mentioned, is super important. And let me go back to your question about Starlink and then standardization. So when I mentioned that the market size was roughly over $600 billion, today the market that we're playing in, operators, is about $18 billion and shrinking. So when you get to a market that's the size potential from a target perspective of over 600 million, it becomes what I call rational. And so what does that mean? The telco market globally is enormous, and it's rational, meaning there's different technologies for different applications. So if we go with that, and if we believe in that, then Starlink is a fantastic satellite LEO technology for consumers and small business. It's a layer 3 best effort broadband network. But what about the rest? And if I talk about the second half of that market, with 80% of that being focused on enterprise, who dominates that market? It's not us, it's the telcos, and they're massive. And so the only way you can unlock that from a satellite perspective is to standardize, which is why we chose very specifically to execute on a network that follows the MEF 3.0 standard. If anybody here is from the telco industry, that's a set of standards that was created by the industry so that they can interoperate for wide area Ethernet. So we're going to be that portion in the sky for them, and that goes all the way up to the stack to how you interconnect to them. How do you order? How do you provision? How do you do your customer service? How do you do your billing? There's APIs that are defined in the MEF 3.0 standard, and that's what we're doing. So we're going to take advantage. We're an enabler. We're a carrier's carrier, and I think some of us in the industry need to continue to think that way because the market is massive. Those telcos are giant. We're not going to take business from them. We have to be complementary to them.
Excellent. So, Nicolas, Jean-Philippe mentioned before the help from the telco ecosystem in advancing the innovations. Does that bring any risk for you specifically as a vendor? Do you fear that the Nokia's, Ericsson's of the world will get into the satellite ecosystem and maybe compete with you?
No, actually, quite the contrary. We don't see it much as a competition, but we see it as an opportunity to come together and to collaborate and to create new ecosystems that can work off each other. We don't see it much of a revenue churn, if you want, that they're going to take revenue away. We hope that the revenue and the pie gets larger, and we can all work together on defining these new services. So yeah, no, we see that as an opportunity. It's not so much a risk, but it really allows us to grow and to build on these opportunities together.
I see. So I think you made an announcement this morning on the new business model. So I want to discuss now on how this trend towards 5G and satellite telco integration will push new business models. So could you elaborate a bit on that?
Yes, sure. So what you're referring to is with our new cloud-native multi-orbit ground system called Intuition that we announced last year. We are building this cloud-native environment for our ground systems for customers to take advantage of, to deploy the system in many different ways. And one area that we always heard feedback on is that there is a need to now enable telcos and enable satellite operators and enable service providers to consume these new capabilities in a faster way. And they can do that by building it out themselves, building it out in cloud-native environments, so saving on CapEx that way. But they also want to now be able to concentrate on what they do best, which is defining your service offerings and defining how to go to market and how to compete in the market and bring the prices down. So there is a need, and we hear that all the time, that there is a need for helping with infrastructure as a service, for example, or platform as a service, or operations as a service. And just this morning, that's what you're referring to, Luke. We announced our new service called Intuition Unbound, which is a consumption-based subscription model. And we are offering it in 2 flavors. It's the operations as a service of our ground segment, and it's also the platform as a service. So we are helping taking that burden away of learning a new system and operating it for the providers. But that doesn't mean that it has to stay that way. It can also be a learning curve, and by the time then the operators get up to speed on how they want to craft the service and how they want to go to market, they can take on, it's all cloud native, right? So you can easily then build out your own networks and operate those and prosper that way.
Interesting. So is there anything, will something similar happen on the space side, Amina? There are some satellite manufacturers that are now offering something similar in terms of infrastructure as a service. Do you see this being a general trend over the coming years?
Most of the innovation is happening rather in on the ground segment when it comes to virtualization. That's easier. All the cloud is there. Of course, the weight and power on the satellite is critical. But there are studies actually that look at virtualizing the payload, so we can host different payloads on the same satellite, and you can activate, deactivate. But these are rather longer term, I would say. But there are definitely studies on cloud payloads, cloud-based payloads. But on the ground, I would definitely join Nicolas about the acceleration that is happening. And Glenn also mentioned TM-MEF standards. They're also based on TM firms standards that are widely adopted by the telco market. And the operators in general, being them telco or SNOs, satellite operators, have to rely on this operation system, right? The network management system, the operation, the OSS, BSS, even the CRM, the interaction with the customers. And if the infrastructure, whatever the business model is, if the infrastructure is flexible enough, cloud-based, that can scale, that you can scale up and down, that you can host different processing in terms of network, then definitely your relationship to the customers or your even customer base is different. So you can rely on catalogs that you can adjust the service or rebuild the service because you can afford a generic purpose hardware that can host any type of service that you can come up with a customer. So there is definitely an acceleration in that sense. The enablers are definitely the virtualization, the business models as the infrastructure as a service. We still talk about 5G and how this is accelerating new use cases in terms of low latency, different kind of devices again. So all these innovations are rather short term. There are trials, that wide trials. Jean-Philippe mentioned the trials that we had with Eutelsat and OneWeb. They are and MediaTek from the chipset side. They are already there. They are implementing the standard, but they are adding on top of that implementations that are vendor specific, just to showcase that this is feasible. And I think it will go on and on as the awareness is getting from the space side at least about how much this is important, how much the costs, as you mentioned, Jean-Philippe, are important to get down. We cannot afford more capex when it comes to the infrastructure, and that's why standardization also as DeFi are really important to accelerate the adoption of innovation and accelerate the integration, as telcos has already somehow went through this digitalization phase. So the space industry, I would say, has to catch up on the digitalization plus join up with them in terms of infrastructure. So it's an interesting time, yeah.
No, super exciting to see all the long-term perspective of the technology. So what about the satellite operators in this 5G environment where everything is standard-based? How do you differentiate? What are the areas where you will find your niche?
So our approach is very clear. First, from a go-to market, our customers are mobile network operators. We want to complement services that the mobile network operators are providing. That's one. Second aspect is we will be multi-orbit, we'll be multi-band. And I think everybody used the word multi-orbit. I think for me, this is not about different orbits. It's about how you manage a service that could be for some application on LEO, some application on MEO, some application on GEO. And we are totally convinced that one orbit is not going to meet all of the requirements. The fact to be multi-orbit is what's going to allow us and our customers to be successful. That is then pushing us to develop some services or some know-how that we do not have today. Because we all talk about the future standardization, but you need to look at where are we today and how are we going to go from here to the future. And let's face it, this is not an easy journey. This is not an easy journey to be able to talk a different lingo with our customers and to have the right skill sets on our side to be able to do this. That's the way we are going to differentiate ourselves. We need to go deeper on understanding the application level and then put together the services that our customers are looking for. That's really where we focus our attention.
I see. Glenn, you had some different views before.
Well, yes and no. I apologize. I lost my voice last week in Barcelona. MWC. For 5G, for direct-to-device, we do in terms of the business case. But for 5G as a waveform, we're looking at that. Today, for applications that we're rolling out for backhaul and the carrier, layer 2 carrier Ethernet services, the most efficient waveform today is a DVB-RCS, a DVB-SX2. And that's going to be our base waveform. Then we have our access scheme underneath that. In the future, we'll continue to launch satellites. Onboard processors will continue to improve. And if the industry adopts 5G waveforms and they become efficient for broadband applications, we will adopt that, and there's no reason to think that in the future, some of our satellites will have both two waveforms, one for DVB-RCS, DVB-SX2, as well as 5G. Direct-to-device is a whole other aspect of it, but to be able to utilize a 5G waveform in a user terminal, because that becomes more cost-effective and more efficient, we're absolutely open to that from a technology perspective. That makes sense.
Right.
Can I, as you like a bit of a challenge?
I like challenges.
For me, it's not if. Think about it, last week, Mobile World Congress. When you have announcement where you have an Ericsson, a Qualcomm, a Sharp, all thinking about how to integrate 5G into their future development. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Is that going to be tomorrow or, in a couple of years? I think we are talking about not 2030, 2035. You are talking about some application that could be delivered in 2027, 2028. This is almost tomorrow. And you also need to look at it as the vendors, the equipment vendors, they need to stay relevant, and at the end of the day, they need to sell new kits. But the drivers will be coming from the MNOs, really looking at how do they maintain, because we keep looking at it as we are under pressure from our side with the new entrants. Reality is the mobile network operators are under tremendous pressure. They need to drive innovation to stay relevant. So I think this is going to be much quicker than what we are expecting.
So let me, maybe, can I?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, let's have some fun. I'm not arguing with you on that point, but when we look at what our role is to, let's say, connect a network, it's not a 5G waveform that's going to connect a base station to their mobile operating station. It's not. It's not today, and it won't be in the future. Where we're talking about access schemes, what's the most efficient access from the terminal to the satellite? Yeah, if 5G is more efficient than DVB-RCS or DVB-SX2, we'll all adopt that because that's the user terminal. We have to adopt that inside. Where I separate between 5G and Qualcomm and all that, they're not looking to put it in the few 100,000 user terminals that we'll have for our satellite network. They're looking to put it in the phones, right, that can work across everything. And that's a different market segment. And what I'm saying from the satellite operator's perspective is we're not playing in that direct-to-device market. But when you look at backhauling all that traffic, it's about efficiency over the satellite. And that's where I differ a little bit from what you're talking about. And the future is today, and today there is no 5G, 3GPP that is as efficient as DVB-RCS for the applications that we're looking at. So that's where we're rolling out, launching starting next year. But then we can always adopt those satellites, particularly as the onboard processors get more efficient, to utilize from the user terminal perspective over the satellite a 5G waveform. That's where we sort of demarcate ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So let's ask the equipment vendor on the panel. How do you see the future of waveforms? And also maybe we can open this discussion a bit on virtualization and orchestration of all these multi-orbit networks.
I think that was
Nicola?
Yeah, so we see there's a lot of different areas that you need to tackle from a ground segment perspective. So there is the cloud. We haven't talked about that yet. The cloud, being able to get ready for the cloud. That's the process of abstracting the software from the hardware, no longer having to be dependent on custom-built equipment, and being able to then operate that in any environment, whether it's on-prem, whether it's in private cloud or in public cloud. That comes with a lot of scalability. I think, Amina, you already mentioned that. The scalability that you can then scale your services up in the cloud and scale it down as demand progresses. So that's a great advantage. But let's be frank about it. The industry needs to develop and needs to evolve from a cloud perspective as well. Well, when you look at the ground segment processing and everything that needs to go in it, there are functions that can reside on the public cloud really, really well. There are other functions because of the cost structure of compute with your energy, with having to pay for data in and out, the egress and the ingress costs of the cloud, the public cloud business cases. You need to look at how you can maximize that and not accrue these kind of costs in the public cloud. So keeping some of that processing on maybe private cloud or keeping it on-prem and in custom-built, special high-density type of equipment, that's what we are looking at from a ground segment perspective. So there is that flexibility that you need in order to be able to mix and match and decide for yourself what is ready to be put in the cloud, what is ready to be kept on premise. And there is going to be a natural progression once the cloud prices and the cloud ecosystems are ready to expand that. There's a natural progression where you can then take those, for example, into the public cloud as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. So, Amina, can you comment a bit on how standards will facilitate the integration of AI networks in AI tools in the network and orchestration element of the future constellation and multi-orbit space industry?
Yeah, maybe just before hitting AI, I'd like to comment on the bottlenecks, the challenges that we have. I fully agree with Glenn about the waveform. That's definitely something that in the 5G world, in the mobile world, the waveform is OFDMA, and it's widely adopted and widely deployed, that we're pretty sure the telco industry will not move out of this to anything else just for the sake of integration. The integration is more the objective of the satellite industry in general, and the maybe acceptance of the customers that are today the biggest customers of the SATCOM, GovSatcom, MilSatcom solutions are probably not also ready to move out from anything that they have today, or proprietary waveforms or protected waveforms. So that's definitely a challenge today, and we see it also in DIFI and in Wave consortiums. The one of, if we want to hit the other ways of covering the devices, the smartphones, the spectrum that is owned today by the satellite operators is also a bottleneck. So the satellite operators today can hope to keep the B2B while enlarging the portfolio of applications and customers, just enlarge the B2B base, the database of customers, but through the telco operators, because they own the subscribers, they own the spectrum, and it's their oxygen. They're not ready to let go of this as well. Then we mentioned also the transformation, the digital transformation that is needed for this integration. And that's where AI comes into play. We mentioned TM Forum, for example, and how this is really nicely split into a digital architecture, how any system can be built using it's called ODA, Open Digital Architecture Framework. And that's where, when you open up and you rely on cloud infrastructures, you can introduce programmability, open APIs. You can introduce more AI. So you introduce abstractions that make each layer a customer of the layer that is below it. And then you can introduce different providers, so that the multi-tier, multi-provider model is also enabled by this softwareization. And everything software can rely on AI, and I think that's we have endless lists of applications and use cases, and the way of using AI for the relationship with the customer, for the management, orchestration, scheduling of resources, being them radio or not, or more IP. The services as well, and how the intelligence can translate an intent from a customer, saying it in simple words. I'm a group of firefighters. I am there. I need connectivity, and then how the system can translate this intent. We can see it as a chatbot way of doing. How can translate this intent or request into a service, then activate the right resources in the infrastructure level, and these have been also showcased in many POCs. So the use of AI, but knowing that 5G, for example, and the telcos in general rely already strongly on cloud-based infrastructures, on software, and on AI, the integration will just also accelerate it for the satellite industry.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exciting, very exciting. Mm-hmm. So, you want to comment?
If I may also provide some other perspective from the ground segment perspective, we see that a lot as well. AI and automation are driving a lot of processes right now in deployment, in the operations, and then ultimately in the customer experience. And what I mean by that, you brought up some examples, Amina. In the deployment scenarios, we see auto-provisioning being, zero-touch provisioning, for example, being a requirement where AI can really make a difference, and the automation processing that you build in can make a difference. Now, couple that with the virtualization and the cloud deployment scenarios that are available, we can now, from a ground segment perspective, for example, cloud stage some of the ground segment before the systems, before we launch them. We can stage them, build all the testing around it, and automate that. Then customers can do the same. Service providers, satellite operators, they can take that staging and build in their features, test out their features before they even have to deploy it. You can automate a lot of processes that way. I think I read a stat somewhere that it can save up to 30% in the rate of staging you do that. So there's a lot of automation that plays into the deployment part of it. But also on the operational side, we see that right now to have a huge impact on how it can help the NOC operator or the technical assistance center to help with their troubleshooting, to detect anomalies, to detect vulnerabilities, to write, and the AI, that's where the large language models come in, they can process a huge amount of data and can come up with the predictive measures on how to circumvent or even how to prevent these anomalies from happening. So AI, with the analysis that's happening, will then be able to be translated in processes that then can be used in automatic processing, and overall that faster troubleshooting, that even evolving then to auto troubleshooting, will ultimately end in a better customer experience.
Exciting. So let's open the discussion now. Is there any question from the audience? I think you have a microphone there, if anyone wants to ask.
Hi, Leandra Bernstein. I'm a freelance writer and reporter. Question for the operators on stage. To what extent do you see your role shifting from an operator to a managed service provider, and what does that imply? And second part of the question, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing on the network, specifically as a provider to MNOs?
Okay, so I'll take the first question. The way we see this from a network standpoint, we have some challenges associated with the transition of what we are doing today and the way our customers are committing to services. I don't think that the question is how do you move from providing a service today to a managed solution. Our customers are looking for services that are prepackaged in a way, but at the same time they still want to be in control of the service they provide to their end customer. So I don't think this is black or white. How do we move from the model where we are today to the future model of providing managed services? Because at the end of the day, the mobile network operators, they don't want to deal with the complexity of providing all of the services associated with the transition from a megahertz to a megabit, from megabit to a gigabyte, and CIR, MIR. They still need to control the value added that they provide to their customers. So, not sure I'm exactly addressing your question, but I don't think this is black or white. And I think what we are going to do is really adding a lot of value and combining a range of services. And I'm a great believer that the solution that our customers are looking for is not a single orbit. There is not one size fits all. If you look at the broad market that we are serving, it's about how you combine and how do you have a smart edge that's really helping you moving traffic to the right for the right orbit based on the price, based on the application services that's required by the customer. I'll stop here. I'll let you speak before I go for the second question.
So there you are. From Telesat's perspective, for 55 years, we've been a satellite operator, and we've only been a managed service provider where we take that capacity today over GEO in Canada. Everywhere else, we sell our capacity to service providers so that they can create their own set of services. That go-to-market aspect is exactly what we're going to do here with Lightspeed. We look at ourselves, the way we position ourselves, instead of calling us a satellite operator, you can call us a satellite network provider, right? And so we're a carrier's carrier. We're taking that position. And to do that, this goes maybe to your second question, we have to be able to create the environment so that the MNOs or the telcos or the other service providers from whatever industry or vertical they're in can utilize our network. And that goes to a VNO type model, being able to take a layer 2 carrier Ethernet network and then build on top of that whatever layer 3 services you want and whatever oversubscription you may want for a particular application. So the challenge then is how do you really do that efficiently? And that's really what we're implementing. And that goes back to some of the things we spoke about, following the MEF 3.0 standards, again, so that when we're dealing with our customers who are utilizing our services and want to build on top of that, they don't have to be satellite engineers. They don't have to worry about link budgets. They'll just program the particular terminal for the 16 different potential services and class of services you can have the way they would if they were interfacing with their own Cisco or Ciena box that terminates their network. And then, of course, all the interaction. Where I would say that we will have to build, and we are going to build out, a portion of what some may call managed services. To your point about mobile operators who want things really simple, they may be able to program what services they want, but they don't want to install a dish somewhere. So the ability to do delivery and assurance and field services globally is obviously something that we have to do for those particular customers that just say, hey, I don't want to deal with it. I'm going to pay you, but you have to do that. And look, I came from the telco world before this. I was at Comcast Business in the United States, and we sold a ton of carrier Ethernet to the mobile operators, but they didn't want to touch it. So we would go install and have our installers do delivery insurance and monitor those locations, and if something went down, they just want to know that we fixed it. So we have to have that same approach.
Hello, Richard Sovan from Keysight Technologies. I'm just wondering if we need to adjust expectations at a consumer level about what 5G NTN is. I wasn't at Mobile World Congress last week, so I got my voice back, but I was at ASMS the week before, where a lot of your colleagues were present talking about implementations and technologies for 5G and 6G non-terrestrial networks. The bandwidths that they're talking about for voice communications of the order of 1 megabyte per second, 1 to 3 megabytes per second of non-terrestrial network traffic. There was a lot of talk about use of codecs and optimization for getting voice communications. But the realities of some situations, for example, the fires in Los Angeles, where maybe terrestrial communications are no longer possible, that's going to have a huge impact on, well, using satellite networks, but is the capacity there? Can people use it? Do we have to trade up on latency and bandwidth and power and talking to cell phones?
Okay, so I tend to have a strong opinion on this. So I'll have a shot at it. The challenge we face today is now we have been talking about NTN for quite some time and really pushing to create NTN as a concept to complementing terrestrial network and our go-to-market for the terrestrial, for the MNO. And suddenly we move from NTN to direct-to-handset. So the question you are asking is a very specific question to direct-to-handset. Yeah. I think I'm with Glenn. I think this is not something that we play in today. The direct-to-handset comes with specific challenges on the satellite and on the ground. There are many other things that you could do to reestablish communication, which is not direct-to-handset. The minute you talk direct-to-handset, you have to talk about chipsets and technology in the handset. There are many other things that are extremely powerful that can be provided today that will provide broadband to sites where you need to have recovery. This is stuff that we provide to Verizon, to FirstNet, and to many others. And I'm sure that Glenn is doing the exact same thing. So you need to differentiate the two. My fear today is NTN start being dominated by direct-to-handset. Well, the market is much broader than this. And I think the expectation that we are setting on direct-to-handset being able to do broadband is a dangerous expectation.
I agree, 100%.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I understood the question a bit differently. If I can,
Okay.
Glenn, you wanted to?
No, I'm with JP on this
All
one.
right. So, yeah, we, as maybe as Airbus, we don't do just satellites. We also build high altitude platforms, drones, stratospheric planes, and all of them would fall into what we call non-terrestrial networks. Well, maybe we don't want to be defined, but what we are not. So we just say we provide satellites and hubs and drones and stratospheric planes. So the way I understood your question is like how we can, when the terrestrial network is not available, still can rely on the same, on alternative solutions, keeping the same KPIs, right? The same quality of service. And so if I give back, while relying on standardization, right? Because at the end, first responders can have any type of devices. If we stick to the example of firefighters, we just achieved, and it's going into commercialization, the implementation of Release 17 on the Alto, that's the Airbus stratospheric plane in Japan with NTT Docomo. So the collaboration with Telco was absolutely needed. So NTT Docomo has the antennas on the ground. The hub, the Alto hub has the relay antenna, so it's transparent. It's not regenerative, but it still can stay in a mission, can give a specific coverage for the duration of the mission while covering the same devices. So that's going into commercialization. It's Release 17. It's not Release 19 with a very nice antenna on board and knowing the weight, etc. That's another challenge. But all the drones as well. We had different projects with 5G drones, and we're actually into commercializing those. And they all implement the Release 17. Why Release 17? It's because it's the most mature one. So we can hardly work on Release 18 or Release 19 today. And 19 is not completely finalized. So Release 17 is the most mature. But the roadmap of standardization is also the roadmap, maps quite nicely with the roadmap of commercial solutions. And in my view, we're getting there. We're going there. I agree with Jean-Philippe and Glenn about the direct-to-device, but that's the ultimate. It has way more challenges because of the chipset, because of the spectrum, because of the cost, because of the acceptance by the telcos, the business model. Sorry, I'm hitting my mic. Everything that is coming with the direct-to-device, but meanwhile, we're doing so much that is aligned with the 5G NTN standards, that is aligned with the legacy of non-NTN in general platforms to provide connectivity for remote areas and crisis management.
Can I just add one thing, and very good point on including apps and including drones. I encourage everybody to look at what the Japanese mobile network operators are doing. If you want to look at where the future is going and how they integrate multiple orbit hubs, drones, into their terrestrial networks, they are years ahead of most of the other mobile network operators because they have no choice, because they need to be prepared for disaster. And what KDDI, NTT Docomo, SoftBank are doing is just stunning. They integrate everything. They all have a direct-to-handset strategy. They all have an app strategy. They all have a LEO, MEO, GEO strategy and a drone strategy.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question, please.
Thank you. Yeah, Jonathan Tomes. I'm writing for Light Reading. So a quick follow-up for Jean-Philippe. You had mentioned that Starlink had accelerated a standardization process that began in maybe 2015. I think that's what you said, if I understand it right. But was that more on a de facto standardization? You're not talking about official standards?
No, so what we were trying to do in 2015 was very simple. There are multiple providers of platforms and multiple providers of modems. And the idea was, how can we, without standardizing the platform, at least standardize the modem? And that's what we were trying to convince the equipment manufacturer. And the idea was you probably don't make tons of money on the modems itself. You make money on the platform. If we find a way to standardize, then the market is going to expand, and when the market is going to expand, we're all going to benefit. I think the approach now is a proper standard.
Okay, thank you.
I Forstadal Tampnet, just like you, Glenn. I just also arrived in from Mobile World Congress. I've been in the mobile industry all my life, building networks in Asia, Americas, Europe. And I have two questions. Question number one is related to, in the mobile industry, for every new G, from 2G to 3G to 4G to 5G and maybe 6G, and so on, that comes every 10th year, the reality is that ARPU, or average revenue per user, is falling. So in the title of this panel, Unlocking the Next Wave of Growth, how concretely do you think that you could increase the ARPU in the mobile business? That's question number one. And question number two is related to, you talked today a lot about technology and standardization, but what is really important for the mobile industry is customer experience. Mm-hmm. So what's your view on the customer experience? And what's the role you are going to take to deliver superior customer experience? Thank you.
Great. Is that a question for me? Oh, okay. I'll start. I'll take it first. So in terms of the ARPU, it is clearly going down for sure, particularly in developed areas. But there's all these unserved and underserved areas where they don't even have 4G or 3G. They may not even have 2G. And I'll give you an example. We're speaking to one of our customers in Africa, and I asked them, how many mobile sites are you going to roll out? And they said, well, we have about 2,000 in our backlog that we can't get fiber to, so this would be a pretty good way to do that. And I said, great, and I thought there'd be a ton of megabits per second, which is where we get our revenue, to those particular locations. And I said, what are you going to roll out 4G and 5G? And he said, no, there's no smartphones out there. I mean, we're going to have flip phones, and it's voice, right? So that's where the latency comes in. But it's 2G, but we're going to enable those towers for 4G. Because over time, what'll happen is all boats rise, the economy rises, and then eventually, hopefully, we'll be able to provide the services. And so for them, for the mobile operators, it's less about how would we enable more ARPU per location in their developed. It's how do we just give them more revenue on top of their business plan today. And that's kind of the way we see it. And now, but still, the customer experience has to be the same customer experience that you'd get here in a developed area. And so I just fall all the way back on our fundamental premise, what we're executing on, which is this layer 2 carrier Ethernet. Because when you do that, and you do it and you orchestrate it, it's not just a word, and everything, the way your network is designed, means that when I go to the mobile operator and I'm providing, let's say, a mobile backhaul service for them, that comes with a set of service level agreements. And those service level agreements are the same service level agreements that they require for their terrestrial mobile backhaul carrier Ethernet connectivity to their data centers. So that's what we provide, and that comes with latency and jitter and packet loss based on where the particular location, what your class of service is. And then, when you talk about machine language, there's no way we could do that and manage that without a machine language system in the background that's measuring all that and then reporting that so we can see ourselves, are we actually doing it? Is there some anomaly in the system or the satellite that's not meeting the latency, the specific latency for that particular class of service? And so it's all tied together. And that's exactly how we're going to make sure that the end user's customer experience is the experience they expect, as opposed to a best effort type of network, which you can connect today, but you can't secure that customer experience. You can't guarantee it. And that's really our difference.
There's another area that you could also build out or prevent the ARPU dropping, which is going into other classes of customers, so such as like the corporate and the enterprises. With 5G NTN, you have slicing now available that enables an MNO to slice and dedicate QoS and SLAs to specific customers, right, to specific corporations. So you could enter now a more of a core private network corporate network type of environment, offering that, moving away from consumers, going more into the enterprises, and that would open up higher margin revenues and higher margin sales.
Yeah, my background, of course, is also related to the CapEx, right? Because to be able to deliver that customer experience, you have to invest not only in the birds, but also, as you say, in all the software, OSS, BSS, but also the backhaul. So it is a fundamental kind of lift, I would say, from an investment point of view. So that's why I'm asking.
Clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we don't have time for anything else, so please thank the panelists for his insights, and thank you very much. Have a successful Saturday.